Astal is a 2D sprite-based platformer released on the Sega Saturn in 1995. I suspect when Sega originally designed the Saturn, they thought games like this were the direction video games were headed. Instead of being the norm, games like Astal ended up being the swan songs of a dying genre. Astal is a game I've always known about and always wanted to own, so I was happy to finally track down a copy locally and give it a spin. There is a lengthy backstory to Astal, with an entire new world created, complete with gods, villains, revenge, and the like, but I honestly didn't find it too engaging. Thankfully, everything can be skipped. Long story short, Astal is on a quest to save his sister. Done. Aesthetically, Astal is a beautiful game, with lush hand-drawn backgrounds representing a huge step above what was available on the previous generation of consoles. The colors pop off the screen, and everything is incredibly detailed. The variety is excellent, with caves, volcanoes, rivers, and glaciers, each retaining a whimsical painting-like look unique to this title. Technically speaking, there are some nice graphical tricks in Astal as well. Astal usually has a dynamic shadow beneath him that changes with his different animations. More impressive is all of the sprite scaling, with the entire screen zooming in and out, much like a Neo Geo game. Astal himself looks excellent, with a ton of frames of animation for each and every movement. The attention to detail is outstanding, and the color palette used actually changes in different stages. In the volcano stage, he almost looks illuminated by the lava. I love little touches like this. The bosses follow suit, featuring a high level of detail, plenty of scaling, and a huge variety in their design and tactics. The music quality is also high, with a soundtrack that expertly matches the world of Astal and the individual stages. Some of the music sounds a bit too 80s for my taste, but it still somehow works here. There are plenty of synthesized instruments and some guitar riffs that remind you this is definitely a Sega game from the 90s. While Astal is an incredible game for the senses, the gameplay falls somewhat flat. On paper, this game should be awesome. Astal has a wide array of moves, including a breath attack and a ground pound to stun enemies, which he can then throw off the screen. He also has a mid-air attack, which is responsive and satisfying to execute. Astal also has a little bird that follows him around and can be used for attack. Some enemies have a glow around them, and destroying them will fill an energy meter. Once full, you can either have your bird bring you extra health or use him to attack. Some areas of the game allow the bird to do special things, like break down these rocks to form a platform. It's a really cool gimmick that gives Astal its own unique twist on the 2D platforming genre. But somehow none of it is really that fun. Perhaps it's the lackluster stage design. The game's levels are usually very short, feature few enemies to contend with, and not that much to do other than go right. Or perhaps it's the overabundance of pits featured in some of the levels. The game shouldn't be that hard, but I found myself dying a lot for some reason, and I can't really place it. I found myself just wishing I'd reached the end of the game so I could move on to something else. Astal isn't a terrible game by any stretch. The gameplay is okay and introduces some interesting new mechanics, but simply isn't as fun as the best games in the 2D platforming genre. And that is a shame, because this is easily one of the best looking and sounding games to come out of the 90s. Some folks put Astal near the top of the Sega Saturn library. Other folks don't care for it at all. I find the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It's worth a look. 3 out of 5.